now it's the time for Providesing. Provides, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. So I give the stage to Provides.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Provides. I'm currently a PhD at CUHK. So I'm very happy to be back here at xCoAx and the amazing setup by the team. And also an honor to be in this panel, and hopefully I can contribute to this rich conversation. So I'll be sharing with you preemptive futures, entropic and negentropic information in speculative design. So first of all, speculative design is a design practice that is concerned with future design proposals of a critical nature. So you know that this course has made it when I made it way to a Wikipedia page. So rather than designing a more desirable future, today I wish to reflect on how speculation may help us to preempt less desirable futures throughout its computational history. So first of all, what does preemption mean? Well, preemption has been defined differently in different contexts at different scales. For instance, we see futures market, health insurance, and multitask operating system are actually forms of micro-scale preemption that distribute risk and work to a larger community. Preventive wars, military strike, federal preemption, and geoengineering are forms of macro-scale preemption, which minimize option of other actors to secure first rights. So preemptions are generally anticipatory actions with speculative qualities, where actions are informed by multiplicity of possible futures. In most cases, it is meant to continue an infinite game for the overall survival of a system, where our sensory cannot be connectively separated from our inference and actionistic systems. So together, these iterative feedback form one of the preemptive systems. What interests me is how to translate such principles in the design of smart and intelligent systems and the value that it may bring for us. The objectives is to define what smart and intelligence might be through preemptive actions, to understand design as speculations that preempt less desirable futures, and to understand how system choice and freedom may be facilitated through preemptive actions. A systematic formulation of preemption and its relationship to computational history is actually deeply rooted in World War II. And the control and communication of human and machine intelligences are just a rethink on how information is actually produced and used. While today we often take information for granted, but it's really not a straightforward idea. It can mean many different things in many different contexts. And most notably, it can be defined as entropy or negentropy. So the differing definition affects the ways in which we think about and use information. So entropy is the measure of probable surprises and disorder, whereas negentropy is the minimization of entropy. And this measure is the foundation to which all digital signal processing and communication technologies operate on. So according to Shannon, an increase in information is an increase in entropy and the amount of probable arrangements in a system. Whereas to Norbert Wiener, information is minimization of entropy. Well, why there's a difference? Because even though both of them were in wartime research, they were drafted to think about very different problems. Shannon was in signal processing and communication. So for him, the prediction of more likely events yields more information. For instance, the likelihood of something being said in some messages, just as the likelihood of some weather. Whereas to Wiener, he was dealing with anti-aircraft fire control. So how to shoot your opponent's airplanes down. And for him, the prediction of less probable events yields more information. So the anomalies and the deviation. This is actually the moment at which multiple possibilities collapse into reality, and is the moment to which preemption happens. So this is how Wiener put it. In fact, the information carried by a message can be interpreted as the negative of its entropy and the negative log of its probability. That is, the more likely the message, the less information it provides. This amount of information is a quantity that differs from entropy only by its algebraic notation and a possible numerical factor. So this is my formulation. If the production of design starts with the production of information, then entropy is the increase of design options, whereas negative entropy is design options collapses into our physical reality. So Shannon and Wiener were both hired as research assistants to study one of the most rapidly used computing devices at the time, the differential analyzer. So during the war, Wiener sent some of his marvelous ideas to his boss, Vannevar Bush, who was the chairman of National Defense Research Committee. So Wiener was criticizing Bush differential analyzer. He was saying that, your machine can only work in one dimension, namely time, but not in two or more dimensions. Also, machines should do arithmetic by making choices on the basis of previous choice, according to a scheduler furnished to a machine. So a memory based on feedback loop is actually a preemptive computing formulation. And later, Wiener received a response from his boss that the ideas were actually not immediate enough to have been effective in the war. And of course, if you send a memoriam like that to your boss, don't expect a promotion. In fact, Wiener's funding got cut right after the war. Anyhow, these ideas highlight the significance of entropy, probability, and compression, which are the critical measures concerning the limits to synthetic intelligences and how to express the most in the shortest amount. Whereas a negentropic approach to information relates a system to its larger environment. So it's taking a perspective from outside the system. And Wiener actually shared a belief with Schrodinger that within a world which always decay into chaos, living beings always strive to minimize entropy through the creation of information. So we are in fact a Maxwell demon that defies the second law to thermodynamics because we don't just disintegrate. Schrodinger described this as the discontinuity of mutations, and he moved on to stating a remarkable general conclusion, that the collapse of possibility produced order. So I was trained as an architect with a background in urban design. It curious me, what does order actually mean? Coming from a tradition of modernism, order no longer implies a Cartesian grid, but the extraction of information, a statistical boundary to a system. So to first speculate on the amount of possible arrangements in the state of a system, to first assign a measure of uncertainty, which is entropy. So Schrodinger also put it very poetically. Much more important for us here is the bearing on the statistical concept of order and disorder, a statistical meaning of entropy. He also stated that our physical laws at the macro scale are actually just an approximation of what is happening at the micro scale. So this is the formulation to the study of complex system by their correlation. And in his formulation, entropy equals K log D. K is a constant. D is a quantitative measure of the disorder of a system, and the logarithm of D increases with D. So the left side of the formulation is actually the macroscopic observation of a system, and the right side is the microscopic view based on the rigorous treatment of large ensembles of microstates. In 5 simple, elegant symbols, the equation already provides a descriptive linkage between macro and micro states. So it's a means for us to comprehend across scales. So understanding the entropy of a system enables us to derive how much energy we have to put into a system in order to achieve a desirable state. And identifying the means of input and describing the evolving state of a system is the act of design. Proposing the desirable or undesirable state and the means of value is the means, and means is the value of speculation, which may provide us with a means to correlate information with energy. So in the matter of extracting statistical boundaries, Wiener mapped the extent to decision-making within time series. He basically categorized time series into short runs and long runs. The former forbade the drawing of conclusion involving variables at the distant future to any high degree of precision. And the overall system goal is to be able to draw some sort of reasonable expectation for speculations so that our actions to be taken may have an advantage on proximate conditions based on short run fluctuations, which is a form of preemption. Whereas long run is typified by long runs of accurate data taken under substantially uniform external conditions. In such cases, the question of design lies in taking data collection as a rule rather than an exception. And the drawing of a simple function based on discrete data point is an interpolation, which can act as a datum to measure disorder or deviations in a system, which is entropy. Concurrently, an extended estimation of projections into proximate future are extrapolations, which are speculations. So the compression question of whether data points can be approximated as continuous, smooth, or possibly periodic helps to minimize uncertainty of a system by prediction. It is a negentropic means to design. While taking into consideration long and short-run statistical works, the overall system should increase in entropy on a global scale while minimizing entropy at a local scale. As such, we can develop a set of choices and freedom for the system. And it is actually the prediction of less likely events and the ability in preempting such events. So lastly, the computational history of preemption cannot escape the mentioning of John von Neumann, the father of game theory and the von Neumann architecture, who is also a major contributor to the Manhattan Project. Von Neumann was indeed a strong supporter of preventive war, and the Manhattan Project is actually the most significant speculative preemption games in modern history. Game theory is a mathematical approach to describe dynamics between competing players, whereas von Neumann architecture is the principal model for central processing units. Together, they advance the simulation of interactions amongst rational decision maker and were made scalable to geopolitical situations through mathematical modeling, such as the Cold War. So the race for preemptive design is as much about the advancement of reality and the simulations of those realities. This basically gave rise to the transcendence of conflicts from physical to mathematical domain and the threat of mutual destruction from the analog to the digital domains. And that's why nowadays we have trade war as much as tech wars. So a brief summary, Wiener and Shannon differing understanding of information provoke different understanding in intelligence, design and speculation, and freedom within collaborative system. So SMART is a network of sensing, actuation, and control units that is able to react based on raw data, whereas intelligence is the ability to minimize entropy through the generation of information and is able to predict, speculate, and preempt through its inference and actionistic systems. And we see this very much in free energy principle. While intelligence is able to overcome entropy without applying any work as defined by thermodynamics, SMART is the physical counterpart. So the feedback between SMART and intelligence is the bringing together of analog and digital computation, the union of Wiener and Shannon's worlds. And within design, an entropic approach maximize surprises or options in the system, which is the principle to speculation that seeds ideas. Whereas negentropic approach is the design of order through defining statistical boundaries and when all design possibilities collapse into reality, which is the moment where we fabricate or implement design. This would mean that as opposed to creating solutions when we have problems, options should be put forward before a problem is realized, and that's where preemption comes in. And lastly, freedom is the prediction of the likeliness of an environment, and preemption is the lack of reason to change your own strategy after predicting the opponent's choices. And the value of speculative design is realized when an anticipatory action is taken through design preemption and vice versa. So in conclusion, speculative and preemptive design inform one another in a feedback loop. So I'd like to acknowledge all of the amazing person who have had enlightened me with all the thought-provoking conversations, and welcome to get in touch with me on Instagram. I'm very active. Yeah, and thank you so much to xCoAx.
This was Preemptive Futures by Provides. Thank you very much, Provides. Now I invite to the